For me, this podcast has a simple mission, and it is to act as a bridge between our generations. We talk about life, we talk about culture, music, their successes, their failures, their regrets, and their legacies. Welcome back to the Age to Age podcast. My name is Midday and I'm glad you're here. I'm also glad to be bringing you a fresh new episode to kick off this new season. If you're new here, I'd love for you to go back and catch up on the previous episodes and stories because we are now aiming to bring you a new episode every 2 weeks. My guest in this episode has a really interesting story that starts as early as when they was 6 weeks old. And that's because she lived with a foster family up until the age of 7 before eventually reuniting and living with her birth parents. Now she's a financial educator, but like everybody else, she still has had to work to overcome some personal insecurities. And throughout our conversation, I had a lot to learn. And she has this unique ability, I think it's a superpower, that through whatever the situation has been, through losses, she is able to come at it and look at it from a positive standpoint. In this day and age, I think that's an invaluable mindset to have. And it's almost incredible. Now, I'll let you sort of see for yourself in the conversation. I hope you have a lot to learn in this conversation as well. And without taking any more time, my guest is Mrs Tokunbo Osunbayo. Thank you once again for being on the podcast.
Okay.
I like to start like this with all my guests by asking, what is your full name?
Okay. So my full name is Tokunbo Elizabeth Osunbayo.
Wow. And where were you born?
I was born here in the UK, Lewisham Hospital, actually.
Lewisham Hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Just around the corner.
Yeah. When were you born?
1966, 12th November 1966.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to use that. We'll let the people work out the maths.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your parents did for a living when you were born?
My mom was a nurse and my dad was into accounting.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Were they quite professional parents?
Oh, yeah. My mom really loved, all her life. I remember her saying that when she was a little girl, there used to be this lady that would go off to work in Nigeria and she was in all whites and my mom would look at her and that was where the dream of nursing started and then my dad came to the UK. My dad I'm going to put it this way, my dad liked my mom more than my mom liked my dad. But my dad was like, oh, you could study nursing in the UK. And I think that's really what got my mom. So, yeah.
How do you figure that your dad liked your mom more than your mom liked your dad?
For one, my mom told me. But two, even when they separated and, went their separate ways, years later, they came back to be friends.
Oh, wow.
And, if my mom would go in shopping when, we moved back to Nigeria, when she goes shopping, where she buys things for her business was close to my dad's office. So she would always pop in. And I saw that they were actually better off as friends. And when I got married, it really worked well because they were really good friends. So, yeah.
At what age were you when they went their separate ways?
I grew up with foster parents.
Did you?
So, yes, I grew up with foster parents. I was taken there when I was about 6 weeks. So I lived with foster parents till 7. So I can't really tell you exactly when it happened. But I know, being a little girl, they were no longer together for a very long time.
Wow. Okay. So I've had another guest on the podcast who also grew up in a foster family. Mm-hmm. What was that like, and when did you sort of reconnect with your parents and your birth family?
Okay. My one fostering was not the type of fostering as we know fostering today. My fostering was more, mom was studying. And so she needed, of course, to go to school. So I was placed with a foster family, but my mom always came to see me regularly. So I didn't have that kind that other kids had, because either there was trouble or things like that. Mine wasn't that. It was just that my mom was studying, and I had the most amazing foster parents.
Who you still have a relationship with, or?
I'm bad. I was. No, I would not say I was bad. I was really horribly non-communicative when I was growing up. Now I understand the value of communication. So I didn't kind of stay in touch, because I went back to Nigeria when I was 8. And I didn't come back to the UK until, I think, 2008 to live.
Okay.
So I know my foster parents would have died a long time, because they were already much older anyway at that time. But I would have loved to find their kids, because I grew up with the children. Well, they were much older than me, but I think, if I remember, I kind of remember their names, but I really had a great childhood.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If you were placed with foster parents at, 6 weeks old?
Yeah, 6 weeks old.
How do you have other siblings?
Yes, I do.
So what was that relationship like?
But I was not, okay, with my mom and dad, I was the only child. So I have half siblings.
Okay.
Yes, on both sides.
Oh,
as you know, with the African family. So, yeah.
It's funny, because in these days it's not classed as typical, but I imagine in that generation, not typical, but it was more common to have, I guess, what will now be referred to as blended families.
Oh, yes, yes. Would we call ours blended? In the sense that, from what I know of blended families, is that maybe the woman is coming with kids and the man is coming with kids,
and they become one.
My one is half siblings.
Right.
So, I've got mother's side kids, I've got father's side kids. And it's crazy, because yesterday I was on a call, got home, wanted to get to bed, and then suddenly I got pulled into a WhatsApp group, and it was my dad's kids, and we had the best time ever. They are absolutely amazing. And, one of the great things is that we have been able to knock off the drama behind the moms and my dad. And we kids just have gone all in and just blended so well that we have the greatest of time. Yesterday we were probably all on the call for more than an hour and a half, and we're all in different countries.
Wow.
And we all just called in. And that is amazing. So I'm really, really happy about that. But yeah, we've made it work.
Interesting. I find that really fascinating. Okay, so that's how you grew up with your siblings, and it's nice that you're still you have a relationship with your half siblings from your on either side,
both,
right?
On both sides. Yeah.
Well, so you grew up and you were born in Lewisham. What primary school did you go to?
I went to quite a number, because when I was with my foster parents, I went to Barnes Cray. I don't think he exists anymore, but that was in Kent.
Okay.
Then when I moved into London, I went to a school called St. John's, because I know with my foster parents, we moved at a time. So I went to St. John's. But when I came to stay with my mom, I think I went to Deptford.
Okay.
A school in Deptford. I can't really remember the name. It's years ago now.
Oh, so you came to stay with your mom, what, you were 7?
Yeah, when I was 7. From what I heard, the story was that foster parents could actually adopt children that have been with them for about 7 years. And my foster parents were about to do it. So my mom went like, So my mom said she's going on holiday. I think that was part of why we didn't have the communication.
Because there was, I can understand that.
I really had a great childhood with them. And I was more, I knew them more as mom and dad.
Makes sense.
My mom and dad, even though I knew my mom and dad because I came on holidays and they would comment, especially my mom. But I also knew them as mom and dad, and they really looked after me. So I know that a lot of people say they had really bad experiences with foster parents, but I don't have that story. Yeah.
Or sometimes it's post when they reunite with their families, they sort of find it difficult to reintegrate back into their families. Was that, you didn't struggle in any way with?
I didn't struggle from that perspective, but I did have those moments where, you know, when I was with my mom, because my mom was working, it was just me and her at home. So I would have those moments where I really wanted to be back with my foster parents.
Sure.
So, you know, I'd sometimes be in the bathroom and say, close my eyes. When I open it, I'm there, you know. But
what about culturally?
Culturally, when I went back to Nigeria, it was really fun.
Oh.
Yeah. It was
Part of me
really
expected
fun.
you to say, not the opposite, but expected you to say it was a stark contrast and that you really...
Initially, when I first got there, it was a shock, and I was taken to a boarding school.
Okay.
So that was tough for that 1 year. But my grandma was absolutely amazing.
Oh, you
So
lived
she
with
would
you lived with your grandma?
Yeah, I lived with my grandma.
Nice.
And my grandma was amazing. So she would come see me, at school. But I didn't stay there long. I think I did 1 year in the school. I just couldn't really cope with the school, being in... I thought that boarding school, because my mom asked me, do you want to do boarding school in London or you want to do boarding school in Nigeria? Now, of course, I chose Nigeria. But
Why? Why did you choose Nigeria?
Because I hadn't been there.
Because I feel like a lot of people, the curiosity. Because I mean, I don't know if I'm speaking for a lot of people, but I would have assumed a lot of people would not, maybe at that time, would have just wanted to stay where they knew and where they were familiar with.
No, I think for me, I was curious. I'd never been to Nigeria. So I was more curious about it. And I don't have any regrets, but for the first year, I would not say it wasn't tough. In boarding school, it was very, very tough. And that was why I didn't really stay there for too long, because I couldn't really cope with that part of it. But,
so you lived in Nigeria for how long?
Oh, 33 plus years. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. I only came back in 2008.
Wow. So was it... You fell right into Nigerian culture, society, and you felt at peace there, or or were there circumstances?
I had all kinds of. Oh, I've had all kinds of things, episodes, I would say, of my life. All kinds of episodes of my life, and I've had the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
I did have really rough times, but now looking back, they've made me who I am. But I also had a lot of great times as well. And one of the things I've always said is I'm really grateful that I was taken back to Nigeria because that literally changed my life.
Interesting.
I don't know where I would be if I am here because I had a cousin who passed away and we grew up together here in the UK. And I always tell myself that could be me. So my Nigerian experience, had the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I would still tick the box and say
it was a good. It was
the best decision.
Wait, what secondary school did you go to in Nigeria?
I went to Holy Child College. So,
that's a popular. I've heard that. And what was that like for you? I guess at this time.
I would be honest and say I didn't have the best of experience there because it was a school for rich kids. And now that I look back, my dad was okay financially, but when you are putting your child against the likes of, back in the day, Abiola, his daughter was literally in my class.
Wow.
So it was really a school for very rich kids. And I didn't have the best of experience because as a young child, I felt I didn't have enough to what the other girls had. And so that part of it wasn't a good experience. Also, I was doing science, which was the biggest mistake of my life. I shouldn't have done science. But unfortunately, during our time, we only had science and if they had business, which they introduced years later.
You think you might have gone for that?
No, not might. I would have been an A student. The first time when I went to retake my papers, I put in for commerce. I had an A3.
Wow.
When I went into higher institution, business maths, I was just like blowing it. So could you see, no careers advice and me going down the wrong route. Yeah. So it wasn't all bad, but what I mean is like it could have been way better if those kind of factors did not play into my story.
Yeah. So going into university then, I guess you did science?
No, definitely. I went to the Polytechnic.
Okay.
So I did a HND.
Okay.
So I did business administration.
So by this point you'd found your path into...
Yeah. I remember the first test we had, it was legal studies. And I remember the lecturer coming in and going like, you guys all messed up. This was the very first exam that we were going to do, or test. And he said, the highest got 67. That was really embarrassing. So he was telling all of us off. And he said we should all come to his office and collect our papers. So I get there, collect my papers. Now, I'm a science kid that came with rubbish, so I wasn't expecting much.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at my paper and I'm seeing 67. And I was like asking someone, did you say 67 was the highest?
Turns out it was you.
And it was me. And I'm going like, in primary school, I did have, I came second a number of times, in the sense that I wasn't very good at mathematics.
I was going to ask this, is whether you were very academic, is whether you were...
I wasn't. I'm creative. But what I found is that it was actually the subjects. Again, it was getting into higher institution that I started to notice that I'm more business minded. I'm really business minded. I love all things business, but it wasn't available for me to actually know that about me. So yeah,
that's interesting. So you went to a polytechnic, and now you're finding your footing in business, in the business world.
Yeah.
At what age in those years, you becoming an adult, what age would you say you started to feel like your own person as an adult, living out of home, finding your way in life?
Yeah.
Around about what age would you say that started to happen?
That must have been about 19. No, yeah, it would be about 19. Because what happened with me with school was because I was taken from the UK to Nigeria. By the time they tested me, they took me back about almost 2 or 3 years. So
that's more common than people realize.
Yeah. So I ended up being in class with, I went into secondary school at age 12.
Wow.
I'm sitting in class with kids who are age, we even had some 8-year-olds. So you can imagine a 4 year gap in age. That also had a telling on me. And also the primary school I was coming from, because when I left, because I went to Mayflower Kenne.
Oh, so you went from Mayflower and you went to Holy Child's?
Yeah, no, I went into a government school.
Okay.
Because I was staying with, my uncles at that time. I'd left my grandma and my dad had come to take me. And so I was staying with my uncles and they put me in a public school. And that wasn't the school I really wanted to go. But it kind of also contributed to how I felt about myself, because I'm going into secondary school with kids coming from all these, fancy schools. And I went to that type of secondary school. It was a good secondary school for its level. In my primary school, it was a Baptist school. It was a really good one, but when you compare it, it's just like comparing certain schools now. Yeah. And I think that also added to me feeling timid, and it really played a lot in my life that it's taken years for me to get out of that and really scrape it off.
So something you said that I picked up on was there's been many occasions for insecurity to build. If you like, the circumstances were all there, and it sort of. So is that something you had to deal with? Is overcome that level of insecurity that you had no part in putting into you?
Yes, I didn't bring it to me,
but it sort of happened.
It's taken years, and I mean it affected a lot, in my life, and I can just say probably over the last maybe 3 to 5 years. Is where I've really started to address it.
Do you find that also you're able to spot some of that in other people as well?
Oh, definitely.
So it's almost like, a gathering of the sick. It's like whatever your ailment is, you're like, I recognize this person's also dealing with something similar.
Exactly. I actually had one that came to me 2 days ago about financial desperation. And I can identify if somebody's financially desperate, even though they feel that they are. I actually said, I wrote a post about them thinking they are hustling or they think they are doing marketing and sales, whereas it's actually financial desperation showing up. But so I know that feeling. I can identify it.
Yeah, I'm always very curious because a lot of us now, even in this present age, deal with insecurities that we had no part. We had no part in the how it came to be, but. It's like it doesn't matter if you didn't contribute to how we got there, but it's on you to deal with it and get it off you, which is it's a big ask.
Yeah, but I think every person, no matter your circumstances, is battling with something or the other.
Yeah.
And I feel that we should be in a place where people can say, okay, this is what I'm going through. There are some people that have gotten out of it. What did they do? And then you start to explore. Because what you're really trying to do is know yourself. I did a training I think just after the pandemic or during the pandemic, where the first training I gave the people was know yourself. It's the most important thing. Because when you know yourself, then you can start dealing with stuff. Because a lot of people just look at what somebody else is doing, try to do it, and it doesn't work. But when you get to know you, you know what works for you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, whether in the UK or in Nigeria, what do you remember the soundtrack to your childhood? What would you say was, if you had to pick, I don't know, one or two songs that you remember as the soundtrack to your childhood?
I would go with Sunny Ade.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
In the UK or in Nigeria?
In Nigeria. In the UK, would have been Everyone's Kung Fu Fighting. Yeah, I remember that. That was the UK. I think that was my biggest song.
Interesting.
Yeah, Everyone's Kung Fu Fighting. Because I remember even when I got back to Nigeria, they would make me sing it. It was, now looking back, it's so embarrassing. But I was like the little girl that came from Nigeria, from the UK, and I would have to sing that song. And I think the other one is London Bridge is Falling Down. But yeah,
so typical.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then Sunny Ade, interesting.
Yeah, really. My dad played it. My dad loved music, so he used to play a lot of Sunny Ade, Obey, Kayode Fashola. I don't know if you've heard of Kayode Fashola. Who's the other one? The Barrister, Collington. When Collington came later, but Barrister. So my dad really loved music. He loved dancing and all that. So we had a lot of music at home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Around about this point, were you close to your dad? Would you describe your relationship as?
When I was little, very close to my dad before I left the UK. When we got back to Nigeria, another side of him came out. He was more like an ogre, I think maybe he had the freedom. But then years later, we got back to that closeness. And I felt, a lot of the family would say, you're the only one that can talk to him. Yeah, so I think we, got into that space during the teenage years. I think now when you think about it, it was probably teenage year things. Yeah. So, but yeah.
And so between both your parents, mom and dad, would you say you were closer to your mom than to your dad? Or
I was closer to my dad at a time, but then I had an opportunity to be closer to my mom in the later years, because when I came back to the UK, my mom stayed with me, and so then we got quite close there. Because, remember what I said, my young years were with foster parents. Then I spent probably just about over a year with my mom before my mom brought me to Nigeria. So at the end of the day, if I put all my time together with my mom, it wasn't a lot until she came to stay with me before she passed away.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, do you remember your first job?
Yes. Now, do I call it job? Youth service.
Oh, okay.
Because before that, I used to go to my dad's office and help out. And my dad wasn't paying us, so I don't count it as a job. So my
free internship.
Absolutely. But my first paid job was doing my youth service, and that was working in the oil company. Oh. So so I was
straight in there.
Yep. So I did my youth service with Mobile, in Akwa Ibom State.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that was really nice. And I remember that because when I got the call-up letter and it was Akwa Ibom, and everyone was telling my dad, you need to change her to Lagos. And my dad said she doesn't know anywhere, let her go. And it was the best decision.
Interesting.
It was really
Is that
amazing.
because of how it was or your disposition to it? So were you kind of already because something that's coming across is you seem to me as the kind of person who sees the upside of everything.
Yes, I'm very upside person.
Was it good because it was actually good, or was it just you approached it as it was good, and so therefore you know?
No, I think for me, I'm always curious. I don't like looking at it and going like, at least I didn't even try. So that's my outlook with things, is that let me try, and then I'll know.
And so you through youth service, and then you come out of that, and then you go straight into working.
Yeah, I come out of that, went straight into working. I worked in a finance house in London. I said in London, in Nigeria for a year, but then I got married. So I'd met my husband during my youth service. Yeah, he was actually working for the oil company.
Okay.
Yeah, so I only spent probably about a year, and that year we were literally almost like planning our wedding, and then we got married. Yeah.
So tell me about that. Tell me about how you met your husband.
Oh my God.
And was there? Did you have to kiss a few frogs before you found your prince? Like, what was that journey like?
My husband's story is very interesting. So I actually did not plan to do my youth service.
Oh.
Yeah. My plan was to come to the UK after I'd finished school, come back to the UK. But my mom now said, why don't you just, wait for me? So this was, we were to go to camp around October. My mom would come home for Christmas. So my mom said, okay, wait for me when I come home for Christmas, and then we can come back together.
Right.
So I went off for the youth service because I just said, okay, instead of staying at home, let me go camp. So I went off to camp. I didn't tell my dad that I was not going to stay. So went off to camp, had a great time at camp. Now, we were in Akwa Ibom, so a lot of people had started going into mobile, trying to, they were getting letters.
Footing.
The Nigeria thing, like who you know. But I didn't do that. So I remember one of my friends said her sister had given a letter to go to the NYC office. So I went with her to Uyo. And I remember she's sitting in front of just like this. And I just sat, on the chair. And the guy kept on looking at me and said, don't you want to be posted anywhere? But I knew in my head I was not going to serve. So I was like, state capital. Because I remember from our days, everyone would say, you better work in there, otherwise it will take you to one bush. So I was like, state capital. So when the call-up letters came, I got mobile. And everyone, at that moment, they were going like, okay, because I didn't do anything. I know how many people had been going to mobile back and forth to try and get in there, and I just got it on a platter of gold. Now, when we got to mobile, I then found out, I think a day or two later, they said they couldn't take all of us. They sent about 80 of us to mobile. And the man came out, the personnel guy, looked at all of us and said, we can't take all of you. And then everyone was deflated. And he came back to, who do you know? And I remember one of the days we were on a boat, because then in Mobile they didn't have the road, so we used to go by boat. They had this big, massive boat, so you take it from the jetty. So one of the days we were on the jetty as we've been coming back and forth with Mobile trying to kind of sort us all out. And I saw this gentleman, and I was telling my friends, I said, this man's face looks quite familiar. So they said, oh, everyone is looking for everyone. Anyway, go talk to the man. I said, sir, your face looks familiar. Have you lived in Lagos? He said, yes. I said, are you a Yoruba man? He said, yes. I said, are you a doctor? He said, yes. I said, And that's exactly what I said. And he turned out, and I introduced myself. I said, I'm talking because then Oyarinu. I'm talking about Oyarinu. Oh, Brother Biodun's daughter. I was like, yes. And turned out to be my uncle.
What?
And he was the medical director in Mobile.
What?
And of course,
that's who you know. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but on that same boat, we met these guys who came in, and that was the first day. We were all still in our uniform with our buckets and all. And there was these three guys that got on the boat, and they were just talking to, oh, you guys are and that was the time during the Ecomog War. So they labeled all of us Ecomog. So it was like, Ecomog, and they greeted us. Anyway, one of them turned out to be my husband, who was my husband at the time. We met him. But then when we got into Mobile, the manager, the department I was sent to, he asked me if I could use the computer. And I was like, no. He said, no, he's looking for someone who could use who could use the computer in the 90s, And I said, I can learn it. And it was like, okay, I'll give you a few days to go and learn it. So I told my cousin, who was already living with my uncle, I said, I have got to do this. He said, I've got a friend who can teach you.
Wow.
And then took me to his friend, and it turned out to be that guy we saw on the boat. And so he handed me and said, teacher. So my husband tried to show me a few things, and then I went back to the supervisor to say, I've learned it. And the man said, no, you haven't. He said, but I like your spirit. come work for. So they took me into that department for a year, and that's literally the foundation of me learning how to use the computer.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and from there, myself and my husband built a relationship.
From computers.
From computers. So I always tell people that the teacher that taught me how to use the computer married me. But yeah, that it's always a very funny story for me anyway.
That is interesting. Wow.
But yeah, that's how I met him, and that's how we got married.
Wow. What's the time frame from meeting to marrying?
So we met in 1990. So, and then we got married in 1992, December 92. So we had about two years. I remember there was an incident when I first met him. I don't drink. So all of us used to go out, and one of his friends said, "Today, Tokunbo, I'm giving you something to drink." So we got to this party, and he poured vodka into a glass and gave it to me. So while everyone was dancing, I just tipped it into the glass next to me. I just saw this glass with beer, and I tipped it in and put it down. So the guy came back, looked at the glass, looked at me, saw that I was still like...
and then put more?
Yeah, no, he didn't. But he just was like, okay. Then my husband came. I didn't know who had the glass.
Oh.
But it turned out to be my husband. Well, wasn't my husband at the time. So he picked it, and I was like, I have beer in this. And he tasted it. It was like, what is this? And it was like vodka. But he didn't say anything, because in his head, he thought, oh, this girl wants to get me drunk. Okay. Okay. So the next morning, I met him at the bus stop, because we were both going to Mobile. And he turned around and he said, you thought you could get me drunk? I'm still at the bus stop this morning. I was like, I didn't even know it was your glass. I just tipped it over. So we had, quite a lot of funny. It was really fun.
Would you describe when you knew you were in love?
Oh, that another funny story. I don't know. We had looked. My husband is generally a very funny guy. He's a comedian, as you can see the kids. So I remember we went swimming, and his friend, who's a pilot, said, "There's something between the two of you." I said, "The way Aki's looking at you as you're coming out of the pool, the way you're looking at, there's something going on," but we didn't say anything. But I remember the first time I really kind of paid attention was when he got me something. I think I went to his place, and he came to drop a present for me. And I saw that he was quite gift-giving, which was opposite to my dad. My dad he was an accountant. So I remember growing up and saying, I would never marry an accountant or someone born in December.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was me. So he was really giving. And I think that kind of drew me to him. And we could talk. We had a lot in common. We had a lot in common. And I think that was what I needed, because I'm quite jovial and things like that. So I can't say I can really pinpoint the day, but I just noticed that I always enjoyed just being around him, and he enjoyed being around me. So so that worked well.
Yeah, fantastic. And then you have how many children?
We have 3. So 2 gentlemen and a daughter.
Wow.
She came much later.
Oh.
Yeah. And my husband
miracle child.
Oh, yes. And he actually is a real miracle child. But I remember when I first got pregnant, my husband was going, like, what am I going to do? We said 2 kids. Am I going to be standing at the dedication line with white hair? And he was like really kind of upset at first, until one day I was like, and I was feeling bad because we had agreed to, and I was taking it in as he was moaning. And then one day I just snapped, and I was going like, hey, mister, it took 2, and I told him off, and that was the end. And then we had my daughter, and it's his princess, and it's just, and I'm going like, but remember what you said? I can't remember anything. I didn't say anything. But
that's amazing. What was it like for you, the journey to motherhood? Was that natural?
Yes. I got pregnant after we got married. I think I got pregnant 2 months after we got married.
Wow.
Yeah. So with my first pregnancy, it was very difficult. But, by the time I had Dami, it was a whole lot of fun. And I remember an incident when I had him. My mother-in-law said, we came to Lagos, because we live in Akwa Ibom, came to Lagos, and my mother-in-law said, okay, that my husband should go and sleep in her room, and she would sleep, with me to look after the baby. I was like, no way, that's not happening. He had the baby, he's going to look after the baby. And I remember him saying, okay, you sleep on the inner side of the bed because I'll sleep on the inner side of the bed. You sleep on my side of the bed, which is out. And I was like, no way, that's not happening. We'll stay as well. But when the baby cries in the middle of the night, I get up, stand on him. And he was like, this is so unfair. But yeah, it was a comedy in our home. So everything was so much fun. But then we went back to Akwa Ibom. No. I was still in Lagos with the baby because I wanted to do a fashion course. So I was still in Lagos with the baby. He went back to, because he had taken his annual leave, went back to Akwa Ibom to get something and come back, and he went to play football and broke his leg.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he couldn't come back for a few months.
And
it was just me and the baby. We just had those stories that made it really fun.
Sounds like you had a wonderful relationship.
Oh yeah, he was fantastic.
And I know that you prior to us hitting record, you mentioned that he sadly passed.
He did
in 2019, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Yes.
And I can only imagine what the journey for you must have been like, given how you described your relationship now. I can only imagine what the last 5 years has been like. Yeah, 5?
I think before that, being a Christian, and I always tell people I'm not just a Christian. I really believe God, and I've seen the miraculous beyond human comprehension. But I know that God knew he was going to go. So God brought me to the UK because I got married straight from, my parents. So I'd never actually been that girl that had, lived by herself, made a life.
That's
I was like right from parents' home, straight to husband's home, husband having a good job. So I didn't need to work, even though I did eventually set up my own businesses, which became hugely successful in Nigeria because I was into party entertainment, event decoration. I was doing for the big hotels, the oil company. So I made lots of money, but they were all more of a fun thing for me. So it was that. But then God brought me in 2008, and I brought the kids in 2009, and we then started trying to get him into the country. And it was just messy. But it gave me 10 years to actually stand on my 2 feet. So that when he did pass away, we didn't feel it from a financial place. We only felt it from an emotional, he's not there place, but not financial. So when we went for the funeral and came back, we were like putting the suitcases back down and life just went on. The only difference was that this guy that speaks to us every day is not speaking every day. If I go to Nigeria, no one's picking me up from there. Well, not that people don't pick me up, but it's not him. So that my story is a bit different. That's why I say to people, it's not like the man goes out or he got sick and he died. I literally almost had 10 years of preparation for when he passed. It didn't affect us financially. It just affected us emotionally.
Quick break. I hope you're enjoying the episode you're listening to. By the way, if you would like to partner with us, or if you can think of another business or platform that would work well with us as partners, please send us an email or drop me a comment in the video or wherever you are engaging with this podcast on. We would love to keep sharing these stories across generations, and we want to do it for a long time. And one of the ways that we would love to do that is to have people like yourselves on board, just to help spread the word and get the message out to a bigger and wider audience. So don't forget to reach out and drop us an email. And also, if you have questions, if you have points of view that arise as a result of the episode that you're listening to, and you want to carry the conversation further, I would also love for an opportunity to connect you or connect my guests on the podcast with listeners like yourself. So also drop me a comment or send us an email. And the links for all of these will be in the show notes below. Thank you. That is I have to say, that's such a remarkable way to look at this because, and again, it speaks to your optimism because rather than look at the incident and see it for, not saying you're not doing it, but see it for what it is, you've chosen to look at the preparation and the time you had building up to that time and look at it as a positive thing. Now my curiosity is triggered because I want to explore sort of other ways that this optimism expresses itself. Because,
it does every day.
Because, you're much older than I am, so I know that you've faced a lot more situations, negative and positive. So now I'm curious. So maybe we'll look at it through these lens. How would you advise somebody who was you maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe help them see some of the positive ways they can look at their lives.
Yeah.
So we're looking at somebody in, I don't want to use any sort of hot topic today,
Yeah.
but a 27, a 30-year-old woman
Yeah.
who's maybe not in a relationship, who's in whatever situation.
Yeah.
What would be the things that you'd want to speak, or if you could speak to yourself at 30, what would be some of the things that you want her to be on the lookout for, or him to be on the lookout for?
Yeah. For me, what I've come to learn and the way I've coined it now is that everything we ever experience is a training ground. Every challenge, every problem is not, it doesn't come to us to be a problem. It comes to us to train us, to help, to serve. See, one of the things I say to people is we are all here to serve and be served. So you will find yourself serving people, and you find yourself being served by people. And so when you start to understand that life is every situation, you would see someone who has gone through certain life experiences, they decide, especially now, they decide to become a coach or something and take what they've learned. That is how humanity has been since after the fall. It's us now learning how to do life. So when I started to understand that everything that comes to me, what am I learning? What have I, what can I pick up? What can I help somebody else with? Has been the driving factor for everything that I do. And it's anything that comes to me. Yes, do I get worked up sometimes? I do. But I've also found out in my quiet space, I start to reflect. Okay, what did I pick up? What can I do differently? And when you start to look at life from the fact that it is you that is going to look after you and everything around you, it's nobody's responsibility. Yes, a lot of us, the way government is set up is to make people believe that the government is looking after you.
In the UK, for sure.
In the UK, for sure. Exactly. But if you are not looking after you and you expect someone else to look after you and that person is not doing a good job, you should come back and ask yourself, am I doing a good job looking after me? That's how I would put it.
What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned in the last 12 months, let's say?
The biggest lesson is even if you start doing things and chipping away a little bit at a time, you eventually finish. And, writing my journal and not rushing things anymore. And I would work until I'm tired and then I stop. So one of the things that I always say to my kids as well is I do not use my energy to play. So it's not the time when I wake up, everyone knows if I go shopping, I don't cook when I come back. I would leave it, I would go sleep, I would re-energize, and then I will approach things. And that's how I do everything. If I'm tired, I don't approach things. I don't work on things. That's the time I would probably be on Instagram, watching videos and having a good laugh. Then when I sleep and I wake up and I've got that energy is either working on projects that I'm working on or it's looking after my home. That's how I function and it works for me.
So you don't subscribe to the hustle mentality, which is every waking hour, we're going for it, where, we get rich or die trying.
Definitely not, because I've got only one life. I'm into financial education. The things I didn't know before that I now know is the most important thing is for you to have a roof over your head. I used to put food at the top. I can tell you that it's not, especially here in the UK. I don't know about other countries, and I know Nigeria, and I believe that is the same thing. You having a roof over your head. I'm not talking about you having a home or a house, a roof. So that means you might be in a room that when you bend over, your head is touching one wall and your bum's touching the other one, but you've got a roof. Because that means that even if you don't have food, nobody will know when you're in your space. And for me, now that I've found that, I have a day job, it pays for the roof. And then I can take my time in doing other things. But and it comes back to that financial desperation, when you don't have enough income to give you a roof, that's when you should be desperate. But if you've got enough income to give you a roof, then spend time and explore. Stop being in a hurry. Most people are in a hurry because somebody has sold them a dream that you can have the big life. You can have the big life even with the little money, especially here in the UK, there's so many free things that you can do. It's a mindset. So that's how I kind of approach things.
Interesting. Well, speaking of financial desperation, you're in a space now where you help other people. I'd say maybe find freedom financially. What would you say is the biggest challenge that people don't realize when it comes to financial freedom?
Financial freedom, a lot of people feel that it's having a lot of money in the bank. That's really what they've told us is financial freedom. But when I look at financial freedom, it's your ability to take your money and do what you need to do with it. And I mean need, not what you want. The things you need to do with your money. So you have to sit down and decide, what do I need to do with your money? Not what the gurus or so-called gurus need. What do I need to do? What is the most important thing that I need to identify and then work on? And that could be your own financial freedom. Some people, it could be debt. Because for some people, it's debt elimination. I need to get rid of it. For some people, it's debt management. I need to bring it to a level where it's not bothering me, and then I can kind of start working through. Honestly, I've seen financial freedom very differently to what I've read in the books. It's, again, know yourself and what applies to you as an individual. And then it makes it easier.
Well, it's great to be able to be instrumental in bringing that sort of education to people who may not know it.
Yes.
Is that what your journal is about? Is that what your journal, does it come from that kind of same education space?
Yes. My journal comes from a place where I'm very interested in there are two areas that really interest me, the grassroots and the foundation. The grassroots is knowing all the basics, getting rid of all the weeds. So,
and by weeds,
yes, the beliefs, behaviors, habits and patterns, and it's all in my book.
Yeah.
So I've got it, my journal. So what are your money beliefs? What are your money behaviors? What are those habits? And what patterns come out of those three areas? Because the patterns are, the beliefs, the behaviors and the habits form patterns. So that you find yourself in autopilot. You would see someone that didn't pay their rent this month. If you sit down with them, why didn't you pay their rent? Because they had gone and spent that money to do something else. And one of the things I do when I do teaching is you've got to identify your money and their money. So the money for your electricity bill is not your money, it's their money. Because both of you entered into an agreement. We promised to give you electricity, you promised to pay us. So you can see the difference. So it's knowing what happened to your money. Somebody could say, well, I couldn't pay my rent because I'm hungry. Okay, so we then keep on peeling until we get to the grassroots and we are removing the weeds, because grass itself is not a bad thing. It's the weeds that are there. So you want to remove the weeds, and that's the grassroots. When we finish getting the grassroots, we can then say, let's lay the foundation for the new financial life that you want for yourself. So for me, I look at it more from, let's explore the grassroots. What did you grow up on? What's your money story? Let's clear all that, do all that before we start building. One of the things that people do now is that they listen to someone who says, go and invest in property or go in. They take you to the big things without dealing with the grassroots and the foundation. And for me, that is my focus. Yeah. So I'm not into the wealth builder. I'm getting you ready.
It sounds like a cleaner strategy, because if you can get the foundation right, anything else you build on top of that, and then you can invest if you've got...
There it is.
Rather than investing, but then you still can't pay your rent and you still can't... Yeah, it sounds like a more holistic approach.
Absolutely. And it is absolutely holistic, is that you get to know yourself, you get to know your income level. I have a sheet in the journal that says, know your income level. So like someone like my daughter, she only needs body and soul income. So any money she has is to look after herself.
Yeah.
But then the next level, you have the body, soul, and shelter level. So that's where my son is, in the sense that he can afford to go get a place. but he might choose not to, but he can afford it. And that is, at a certain age, a young person should be moving towards having income that if I want to move out of my parents' house, I can. So I'm living here because I want to and not because I can't afford to move. And so there's all those levels, and it goes up to the global influencer level, which is...
how does a person get a hold of your journal?
Well, I've got it. I will share the link with you so people can get it.
Please, yeah.
But I'm just trying to look at where they know your income. Yes, so I've got it here. This is the first edition. We actually, we went to the show, to the women's event last week, and all of them sold out. So
wow, because it sounds like the right kind of help.
It is. It's if you want to be financially organized, this is the journal to have, because I've put over 25 years of experience of the things I've seen, both back in Nigeria, here in the UK, things I've seen globally, things I've followed, and I've come up with this journal that is that very foundation. So know your income level. Like I said, I've got the body and soul level, body, soul and shelter level, lifestyle level 1. So that means you can meet those basic needs, but you can also do a little more. Then you've got the lifestyle level 2. You can afford your needs, wants, and some desires easily. And then you've got the lifestyle level 3. You can afford your needs, wants, and desires easily. So you want to take a holiday now, you can just go, And then you've got the giver level. Are you able to give to the causes that you love to support easily? And then the final is the global influencer level. Are your income sources making a difference on a global level?
Wow.
The likes of Elon Musk, the likes of Jeff Bezos. That is the level. So you need to find out, and that's why I said you tick it, is it a yes or a no? So you start to identify where you are and the age group that a person can be when they
find themselves in different brackets.
That's it. So
okay, wow. Please send me the link. I'd love to.
Yeah, I've got my website, which is tokunboosunbayo.com.
Okay.
If people go on to tokunboosunbayo.com, you would actually see it there. I'm rebuilding the website, but I've put out everything that people need to get there and get that done.
Oh, fantastic. I like to. Okay, so around about this time, I usually ask, what has been, or what would you describe as your deepest or your biggest regret?
That I believed in myself more in the early days, that I actually have a message and the message is good enough. I'm coming from a perfectionist lifestyle or personality, and so everything has to be absolutely excellent. But I think when I started telling myself, is this good enough? And then that really started to shift things. So the third edition of this journal has been corrected. So the first one, as you can see, I have the first one, and you will see a lot of things in there from here. See, things that I updated. The old me would not even let this book out.
Wow.
See, this was even the second that I picked out. But if I did not start doing and put out the first one... You wouldn't. Yes.
What's the saying? Done is better than perfect.
That's it. And so I had to get to the place of good enough. So when I finished the first one, if you see the first one, it didn't get to the end. It went over. The second one, it was corrected. We sold it out, and then we're on the third one. And while I was working on my one, I saw a few more errors and I corrected that. But I'm quite relaxed in the sense that, you know what, if it's good enough, because it becomes part of your story.
Yeah. And also, it doesn't take away from the value. Sometimes, if you, for example, if you never told me that there were errors in there,
you won't know.
I wouldn't know, and I would still get the same value out of it.
Exactly.
Sometimes,
Yeah. So I think that for me is good enough, and then keep on growing.
And then we'll end this on a positive note, because you radiate so much light. What is one or maybe a couple of things that you're the most proud of? And you can't say your kids.
Yes. I think everyone knows me. My children's books. Is also I've got a book that I've been working on for now probably about 15 years. And it still hasn't been made.
Wow.
I have to make that book. But I stopped somewhere along the line because I was getting quite frustrated, and I wrote these 2 little books just to feel that I'd done something at the time.
Broken Promises.
So this is Broken Promises, and this is teaching kids about debt and not getting into debt.
Wow.
And at the back of the book, you would find the lessons. So, because sometimes, people don't pick out things. So I've written lessons at the back and all that. Now, I had someone ask me at the time, before, we got into the situation of Black Lives Matter. I don't know.
Sure.
I had an illustrator make this book, and it had these kids. I just loved the beauty of it. I grew up in a very different story where I had foster parents. So I didn't grow up in a black or white kind of thing. So when I had this made, I just loved the pictures. The person who made it for me probably didn't even think of it, and neither did I. It was like, do you want a black kid or a white kid or a mixed race kid?
I want a kid.
Yeah, I just loved the pictures, and they came out. But then someone said, "Oh, why didn't you put black kids there?" And I'm a person who's coming from a big place of insecurity, and it's been a war to be able to continue selling this. And I kind of went back in. So, but now I'm more into, this is useful. Everyone that has gotten this book, even the parents said it's amazing that even they read it. Like, this 10 pence is about the little boy trying to save some money, and granddad helped him. It was a really lovely read, and even the adults that read it said they really enjoyed it.
I honestly, without the added context of, I guess, the last 5-6 years or so, I wouldn't even think of the book in those terms at all. It wouldn't enter my consciousness.
Absolutely.
And I think some of the way we live now, we ought to sort of look beyond the context of the present.
Absolutely.
Because if you create something, if it's good, more than likely it will outlive you.
Yes.
And then the context in which it will be enjoyed will be so different from the context that you're... So it's almost not worth fixing something so tightly into the era that you're in.
Yeah. But one of the things that I think I've come to understand is that everybody has their story and their journey. And because we don't know, when people act or react in a certain way, we've got to connect it to the fact that there were certain things that's happened in their lives that has made something a trigger point for them. And I'm becoming more aware. So when somebody behaves in a certain way, I go, okay, where is it coming from? Because something in their past has triggered their reaction. And you start to see that life becomes very different. Yeah. When we all look at that, it's like, oh, this person is behaving this way because of, I don't know what it is, but something has triggered it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Oh, it's been such a wonderful conversation. And I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll put the links for your book and for the children's books as well.
Yes.
I'll put those links in the show notes so everyone can find them.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
it's
you.
Really lovely.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sticking through to the end of the podcast. Now, as promised, links to Mrs. Osunbayo's journal and her books will be in the show notes, so feel free to check those out. And I'll also leave her socials, link to her socials, her website, and places where you can connect with her. I'll leave those also in the show notes, so you can carry on the conversation. If there was something that you heard from her that you want to sort of get more clarity on, links to her socials will be in the show notes. And thank you also for listening to the podcast, and thank you for sticking with us. We're going to be bringing you fresh episodes every 2 weeks, so that's twice a month. And we're going to be doing that, and we also seek your partnership and continued listenership, so thank you. Once again, my name has been Midday. I was love when people say that. But yes, my name is Midday, and thank you for sticking with the Age to Age podcast. Until the next time, see you later.